Arceus. They're no easy opponent to beat. I dare say that they are nigh unbeatable. And I'm not talking about fighting this llama stuck in a fence post you battle in the Hall of Origin, though that's no cakewalk either. I mean the lore-accurate Arceus, the one who created the world and all of its gods. They are very, very powerful, likely capable of absolutely decimating every Pokemon in existence with ease. Or could they? Pokemon's lineup of legendary and mythical Pokemon is quite versatile, and many of them are incredibly powerful. Sure, if Arceus one day decided, fuck it, I'm gonna kill everyone and start over, they probably could. But what if the other Pokemon had the element of surprise? Then, well, they'd still need to figure out one hell of a plan. But it may very well be possible. So, I guess now it falls to me to figure out said plan and answer the question. What would it take for every legendary Pokemon to beat God? Here are the rules. Every legendary and mythical Pokemon is included in this battle against Arceus, with the only two exclusions being Arceus himself, of course, and Ultra Necrozma. The reason I'm leaving Necrozma out is because a lot of his powers are really good counters to Arceus, and if you're seeing Terminal Montage's legendary and mythical Pokemon Battle Royale, then you know that Ultra Necrozma alone against Arceus is actually a bit of a toss-up. So to make this actually interesting, let's not include the only Pokemon who might actually be able to beat Arceus on their own. Every other legendary and mythical is here though. They all have as much prep time as they need, and they've managed to shield their plan from Arceus' eyes somehow, meaning they'll have the element of surprise against him when they finally attack. What constitutes as defeating Arceus would be for them to essentially be either killed or reduced to a state where they might as well be dead. This, of course, would be very difficult for an all-powerful immortal. So, here is everything we need to do to have anything even slightly resembling a chance. The first thing we'll need to do to beat Arceus is keep him contained in a single form. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, we find out that the form of Arceus we know is just one of many avatars for the real thing. Probably the mentioned 1,000 arms in his Pokedex entry. The true Arceus luckily has no true physical form. But you know what they do have? A mind. One which can be affected by Psychic and Confusion moves during gameplay. So the first step would be to keep Arceus' mind bound in a single one of its avatars. This, of course, would be an incredibly difficult feat, since even if they can be hurt by psychic attacks, they're still Arceus. But what may be even more difficult is step 2. Even if confined to a single form, Arceus still has total control over basically the entire universe. And this could make it easy for them to break whatever is confining their mind, escape, and then obliterate all the legendaries who dared to betray him with just a single thought of his mind. So we'll need a way to cancel out those pesky universe-controlling powers of his, and reduce him to only being able to use his normal Pokemon attacks. But that still leaves step 3, overpowering him in general. Even with Arceus only being able to use his normal Pokemon moves, they still have a little move called Judgment, along with plenty of other hyper-powerful abilities. And then, after Arceus has been subdued and knocked unconscious, there's still one final step. The permanent defeat. Whether through being atomized and dispersed, frozen in time, made to sleep forever, or suffering the loss of their immortality, followed by a true death, Arceus must never be able to form consciousness again. Their destruction must be true and permanent, or we haven't really defeated them in the grand scheme of things. And when you're dealing with gods, the grand scheme of things is the only scheme of things that matters whatsoever. So obviously pulling all of that off is going to be incredibly difficult. But with enough ridiculous and elaborate planning, it's not quite impossible. Here's the plan, step by step. Step 1 is definitely the most difficult step in this process. When I said earlier that step 2 might be more challenging, I lie. Arceus is a multiversal and omnipotent being. Even if he can be affected by psychic attacks, how could one possibly bind him in a single form? Well, for this step, we'll need 3 legendary Pokemon to do the job. Mewtwo, Darkrai, and Victini. Mewtwo is the most powerful psychic type in the entire Pokemon franchise. Hands down. If anyone can even hope to keep Arceus' mind contained, it's Mewtwo. In which case we're screwed, because even Mewtwo can't hope to keep a mind like that contained, even with the element of surprise. This is where Victini comes in. It's said through the Pokedex entries that Victini has unlimited energy stored in its body, and that it's guaranteed to bring its trainer victory no matter the type of encounter. Although in this case it would be bringing that victory to Mewtwo instead of its trainer. Now, even then, this is the Pokemon God we're talking about. And even though Victini supposedly brings victory no matter what, I feel like that definition is still within reason. Okay, I don't know if it's going to work against God. But what if, say, this Mewtwo and Victini weren't alone? Behold, the first bullshit strategy of this video. Time-space duplication. With us having access to both Dialga, the God of Time, and Palkia, the God of Space and Dimensions, there's no doubt got to be a way to duplicate things between the two of them, whether by bringing objects through timeline hopping or by copying space itself. Now, I'm guessing that this duplication won't work on Palkia and Dialga themselves, since they themselves sort of are time and space, kinda, sorta, but it probably could work on some of the other Pokemon. So, have Palkia and Dialga make as many copies of Mewtwo and Victini as can possibly fit in the Hall of Origin, plus some extra Victini copies for later use, since Mewtwo definitely isn't going to be the only one here who needs a magically guaranteed victory. After Arceus is locked in their own body by the army of Mewtwo's being beefed up by the army of Victinis, someone's going to need to keep Arceus contained and from obliterating Mewtwo's and Victinis long enough for the rest of the Pokemon to execute Phase 2 of their plan. This is where Darkrai comes in. Darkrai will use Dark Void on Arceus, putting them into sleep, and then hit Arceus with as many of their unholy mental abominations that could possibly be considered a nightmare by Arceus' standards. Considering that the entity of Arceus' being is now locked into this one form, this is unlikely to work for very long before Arceus awakens and deletes his attackers. But it should work for just long enough so that Phase 2 of this Divine Revolution can get started. The second Darkrai gets Arceus under, Groudon will use his powers over land to bring the entirety of the landmasses beneath Mount Coronet up to the same height as the Hall of Origin. That way everyone can do their work without having to fly or stand on this cramped platform. Hoopa will use his rings to teleport all the Mewtwo's and Victinis further away from Arceus so the other legendaries can get down to business, while also being careful not to break their concentration containing Arceus' mind. Then, it's time for them to commence the mission of containing Arceus' power. Arceus, being the god of the universe, has total control over time, space, and matter. However, similarly to how the combined powers of the Lake Trio are capable of countering Dialga or Palkia, the combined forces of the Creation Trio have the same powers of Arceus. Dialga controls time, Palkia controls space, and Giratina controls antimatter to combat the matter that Arceus controls. However, it's still said that Arceus can easily hold back the three of them at once, meaning, unlike the full Lake Trio against a member of the Creation Trio, the full Creation Trio's powers over time, space, and matter are still inconsequential against the powers of Arceus. And as I said, we can't duplicate the Creation Trio like we can the other Pokemon because of their connections to the fabric of time and space, but we can make red chains. I just mentioned how the Creation Trio's connection to Arceus isn't too unlike the Lake Trio's connection to the Creation Trio. And if the Lake Trio can empower any number of red chains in order to counteract a member of the Creation Trio's power, then I don't see why the Creation Trio can't attempt to make a red chain themselves. Sure, one red chain definitely wouldn't be enough, but if we got dozens of red chains made by the Creation Trio, along with several dozen more red chains made by the Lake Trio, along with the Lake and Creation Trios themselves working tirelessly with every piece of their being to counteract Arceus' ability to manipulate time and space or create matter, and a bunch more Victinis empowering the Lake and Creation Trios to ensure victory, plus maybe some of the Mewtwo's trying to mess with Arceus' concentration while they're containing their mind, then I think it would be more than enough to render Arceus' control over the universe useless. That means all they have left is their normal physical Pokemon abilities, meaning that it's time for Step 3. Step 3 is probably the easiest step out of all of these, since it's just winning a normal Pokemon battle against Arceus at this point. It may even be easier than a normal Pokemon battle against Arceus, since all this shit we have restraining their powers might also hold back their normal Pokemon abilities a bit. Now, stats-wise, Arceus is undoubtedly a very powerful Pokemon, and it has moves like Judgment. But some Pokemon, like Mega Rayquaza and Mega Mewtwo, actually have a higher base stat total. So, Arceus ain't the most powerful when it comes to stats. Very powerful, but not the most powerful. So, while Arceus is contained, struggling to get free, and throwing Judgments everywhere, it's time to send in Mega Rayquaza, Eternamax Eternatus, the original Dragon of Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem, and a Mega Evolved Mewtwo duplicate. This level of firepower should frankly be overkill, and it's more than enough to reduce Arceus' HP to 0 in very little time, hopefully without breaking the red chains in the process. Considering the great power behind the consciousness within Arceus, all the Mewtwo's will still need to continue to contain Arceus, and the Creation Trio will still need to continue countering Arceus' power. However, they'll be able to ease up a little, giving the rest of the crew an opening to complete Phase 4. And the final step to our 4-part plan on how to defeat Arceus is finishing them off. At this point in the plan, all we've got left to do is figure out how to kill an Immortal. How do we kill that which cannot be killed? As it just so happens, killing Immortals is a topic that I've given plenty of thought to well before I thought up this video. And the best solution I've been able to come up with in the time I've spent thinking is throw them into a star. Stars are incomprehensibly hostile environments. They will disintegrate anything that enters them, and they will make sure what enters them gets trapped in the intense gravitational pull, and therefore stays disintegrated, meaning no regeneration or escaping. A black hole would also work and theoretically be more difficult to escape, but I'm going with a star, since alongside the crushing gravity, it would also cook their scattered atoms, which would cause chemical reactions in them to make regeneration even more difficult, if not entirely impossible, even once the star is depleted. Plus, I'd rather imprison my immortal gods somewhere where space-time is stable, and if I pick a big enough star, it'll eventually become a black hole anyway, so why not? As powerful as Arceus is, their llama form still takes fire damage, meaning if Arceus gets sent into a star, then it's game over. So, once Arceus is unconscious, we'll send Solgaleo, Lunala, and Deoxys into deep space to find a red dwarf. Red dwarfs are small, but they can last tens of billions of years, and they are very dense, meaning it will be even harder for Arceus' particles to escape. They're not as hot as blue dwarfs, but they last longer than them, and the heat is still plenty enough to disintegrate anything that enters into its center, even Arceus. A red dwarf won't ever turn into a black hole, but as I said, I prefer my prison to be stable both dimensionally and temporally. And black holes aren't anything if not unstable. Once one of the space-dwelling Pokemon finds this star, they'll have Hoopa open a portal and send Arceus into the star, and then it's over. Now, there's still the problem of keeping Arceus' mind contained and preventing it from meeting back up with its true form. The hope is that with Arceus' brain disintegrated in the star, Arceus' mind won't be able to form consciousness and try to escape, and that even if they can try to escape, they won't be able to escape the star's gravity. But it is a bit of a long shot. So, just in case, have Dialga and Palkia duplicate about 1,000 Jirachis, and have each of them wish to form a great 5th-dimensional psychic barrier around the star so that Arceus' consciousness cannot escape. Actually, wait, a star is pretty big. Okay, 1,000 Jirachis won't be enough. Give me 1 billion Jirachis. And that is how I believe every legendary and mythical Pokemon, except Necrozma, would work together to defeat Arceus. Sure, that star wouldn't last forever, but it'll still last for tens or maybe even hundreds of billions of years. It'll last longer than the universe is old, and I think that's sufficient. Plus, they could always have Solgaleo or Palkia just send another star to where Arceus' particles are in order to prevent them from reforming after the first red dwarf dies. Now, it is hard to say how likely this would be to actually work in-universe. Arceus has a lot of tricks up their sleeve, likely no shortage of failsafes, and I admit that being able to use an army of Mewtwo's and Victinis to restrain Arceus' mind in one of their llama forms, even though before they were essentially just controlling these llamas as if they were just video game characters, is a bit of a long shot. There is a very good chance it would work, but there's also a very good chance that it wouldn't. We don't know nearly enough about how Mewtwo's powers work, or how Arceus' avatars work, or how Arceus' true form works, to be anywhere near sure. We also don't know if it would be reasonable to expect the Red Dwarf and the Jirachi barrier to contain Arceus' mind after the Mewtwo's leave, Or if Arceus' true form really would just become a dud once Arceus' mind is extracted from it. Really, if this Divine Revolution were to actually become a thing in games or media, it would be up to the writers to decide who would win. But, as the writer for this particular example is me, I say it would work. And I'm the writer, so... It works! We've done it! We've defeated Arceus! We did it, everyone! Claps all around. Give me some slaps on the back. Right here, right here.